So I think maybe a month ago, I asked on Instagram and maybe even LinkedIn for people to send questions for AMA podcast episode. And if you go check the podcast feed, there is no AMA podcast episode. And wonder why? Because not enough people ask questions. So first off, if you have AMA type questions, send them my way. I would love to answer specific questions that you've been wanting to know, because chances are, if you have the question, somebody else has the question. But there was a very good question that came through on Instagram I wanted to finally answer, and figured we'd do that in one of our musings. So the question came from a mutual friend of ours, and basically the question was along the lines of like, how do I find time to balance all the things? And this is a question I've gotten a lot in my career. Being a husband, being a father, being a financial advisor, creating content, starting a community, all these other things that I've done, how do I find time for all of that? And the funny thing is, like, I used to take pride in people asking that question, like, how do you do all of the things? How do you find the time? Sometimes I think I was doing too much, and that manifested itself into kind of the burnout, and that took me to where I am today. So I still do a lot of things, but to me it doesn't feel like a lot. But how do I manage it? And more importantly, how would I recommend others manage doing multiple things? So our friend is a husband, a father, a business owner, a content creator, does a lot of the same things that I do. And so how do you balance it all? So the way I balance it all personally, and I think this is what I would recommend, is prioritizing. Like, what are the things that are most important? And then ranking them, and like, those are the things that have to happen first. So family is always going to come first for me. Technically, it should be my health should come first. I'm getting a lot better about doing that. I've talked about that a whole bunch, about how being selfless is actually being selfish, because through selflessness, we don't take care of ourselves and we don't give our full self to other people. So if you think about, if you're always operating on a battery of 50% because you're not getting enough rest or you're not working out, you think you're giving everybody yourself, and maybe they get more hours of you throughout the day, but it's a lower concentration. It's not as much of you. Where if you take an hour or whatever you need to fill your cup, and then you're at a 95%, then you can give more of yourself in a shorter amount of time, and people are actually better off. So I would say that I think I still err to my family is the top priority. I'm getting better about moving me in front. And then my clients, RLS Wealth always comes first. I don't know if that's the perception, given that I don't do a whole lot talking about RLS Wealth anymore. But the reason for that is I'm not trying to grow that. I'm just taking care of everybody. So there's no reason to talk about taking care of my clients, because that doesn't help anybody out there. It doesn't give anybody any education. So RLS Wealth comes after family and myself. And then it kind of spills into the other ventures. For me, creating is really, really important. So having that time to create my daily notes, the podcast, our videos, Morgan, finding time for that, and then just continuing to move down. And the further down something is, the less of a priority is, and it may or may not have time for it. And there's no right answer to how you prioritize, but you have to know what's most important, so then you can begin filling your day with the things that matter the most. And recently, I've gone so far as to block out my calendar, which sounds like an obvious thing to do, and I've always struggled doing it. But I've gotten to a point where I have such clarity about who I am, where I want to go, what I need to do. It's a lot easier to stick to it because it has purpose behind it. Before, when I would block schedule, I was just doing it because I read in a book that's what some successful people do. So let me try that. And there's no purpose behind it. There was no emotion behind it, so I didn't stick to it. It's kind of like when I talk about life planning and helping clients create a vision for the life that they want. When they get energy and emotions attached to it, then they're going to do the things that need to get it done. Like, now there's a purpose to that vision. There's a purpose to my blocking of my calendar. So that's in there. And now I can look at my calendar every single day and know, hey, I have a few hours for creativity. I have a big block for RLS Wealth. And in those times, if I stick to them, I'll get everything I need to get done and get it done. And I also have my yoga built in there. And I was telling you, Morgan, that today was my first day back at CrossFit. As much as I want to not have to go to CrossFit and work out at home, we might talk about this in another video, I know I have to be there. So I went to CrossFit. So what I'll be doing over the next week is looking at my block calendar and then looking at where can I fit in CrossFit 3 or 4 times a week. And then that will go on as a immovable object, and I will build around that. So I think the easiest way to do all of the things is to know what's the most important, what are the priorities, and then begin to create structure in your day. And I think another reason I struggled with blocking out before was I never wanted to become a robot. Like one of the things I enjoyed as a business owner, especially, is the freedom to do what I want and make some changes. And if I want to sleep until 8 o'clock, I could sleep until 8 o'clock on a Wednesday. So I don't know if I'll ever get so rigid that I always follow the block schedule perfectly. But if I'm following it 80 to 90% of the time, then I think I'll continue to be productive and do everything I need to do and not have any balls be dropped. The other thing that I think is another way to help out is being able to delegate, assuming you get to a point where you can afford to bring in people to help. So, having Morgan, you record these and edit these videos helps me get more content out there that I don't have to do myself. I'm hiring a VA, so I will have a virtual assistant that'll work for me 20 hours a week at RLS Wealth, because for the last almost year, I've been doing everything. So this person will help me do all of the Charles Schwab and Altruist and paperwork type stuff with clients, which isn't a whole lot, but it adds up and it interrupts the day. And that means now my block of time for RLS Wealth doesn't have to go to any of that. It can go all the clients, which is really where the greatest value is and what makes them the happiest. So getting to a point where you can delegate so that you're not spending the little bit of time that you have on things that don't really matter or that you don't enjoy. I mentioned that I need to eventually have somebody help me with my merch, like getting the shipment in and getting it to the printers, and me not having to do that because it takes a little bit longer than it should because it's on me. So delegation and being able to build a team, I think, is a goal. Like most of us aren't there right away, but if we can slowly begin to do that, like my VA is 20 hours a week. I don't need a full-time person yet, but maybe in the future, as I do that and I get freed up and my income grows because I'm doing all the things that matter the most, now I can hire them at 30 hours and then maybe have somebody full-time doing all of those things. So to summarize it, prioritization, blocking out your calendar, putting structure to your calendar so you know you can do the things you need to do that are most important, and then delegating. And then the final thing I'll add to that before we wrap this one up is, I think as you do all of those things, keeping in mind the vision of the life that you want. So if you're going to spend the time prioritizing and delegating and blocking your schedule, you may not want to do it for today's version of you. You may want to say, okay, where I'm going, what do my time blocks need to be? Where I'm going, what do the priorities need to be? Or you might need to revisit it. Your priorities may need to be one way today to get you moving faster in that direction, but then eventually you want to change those things to reflect where you're going so you can grow into it. So don't necessarily plan all those things for the current version of yourself, because if you're watching this video, you have some interest in going somewhere else. That's why you're pursuing, that's why you're thinking about your authentic life. Begin to do some of that planning for that future version of yourself. Act as if you're already there. What does your day look like? What does your week look like? What do your priorities look like? And start from there and allow that to transform you to that version of yourself that you want to be. So I hope that answers that question. And send more AMA questions.